Hi. So, in today's video, I'll be telling you more about my high school teachers and, anything that would indicate that perhaps they too were reading my Akashic records. I'll tell you one story when I took a shortcut and it just didn't work out for me. So, um, I will also show you how actually I was modeled a behavior and I was presented with a behavior, presented with an idea, and then I went to another person to do the same shortcut. Yeah. So, so if you're curious about the further events from Piglet, and stay tuned and off we go. So we are starting with Miss Sedek, my Polish teacher. Yeah. So basically she would always repeat that she had to handle students with mature exam and she cared about them the most as they were about to take the exam, mature exam. And she would repeat that we would write much more in the third grade, but in the first grade much less because of the other group she had. And then she got pregnant and then she was gone. She didn't teach us for the next 2 years, and we just wasted 1 year, I believe. um, but what I remember about her was that the moment when I actually got lower grade for the test, for which I studied really, really hard, and I was really prepared, and I really got all the answers except, a feeble and a tail. So I was supposed to write about feeble, and I have described a tail, anything that the questions were regarding to, like characteristics, and I don't know, maybe examples. I just got a different genre, and I focused on a different genre that it was required. So when I received the test, I asked if in the very same moment I could answer the question regarding feebles and I could change my grade in the same way. And she refused me and she told me the test was already taken, which was the truth. But I didn't know the result until I had the test in front of me, and I didn't have the answers when I had the test in front of me, right? I could just have those answers in my head. So it was a big no on her part, and she got nervous, and I still couldn't understand like why. Mm. And then there was yet another situation when we yet again talked about that grade, and somebody took a photo. Marlena took a photo of me, and I looked horrible on that photo. And it really looked like, I was standing reddish on my face, and I had hands like, explaining to her. And the photo was taken from the profile, so it didn't look well, and it looked as if I was just attacking her or something. And Marlena posted that photo on her Facebook account, and she kept it for years. And after years, I asked her to take it down, and she was like, "I can't. I don't have it." And something. She would just say something stupid that she couldn't, Um, so that was Mrs. Sedek. And then we had Mrs. Susowska, and the only lesson I remember with that lady was that the lesson when she just talked about the painting she bought that was very much expensive, and she showed us the painting, and the painting depicted flowers, and it was all very flat. The painting was lacking the depth. There was no spacious object visible in that painting, and she paid for something that was divided in three parts. It was one painting on three separate blade drums, three separate desks. And that was more or less the pattern that the lessons looked like with that lady, that she would focus on talking about her life. And when it comes to my English teacher, see, the very first year we had a teacher that was actually a very good teacher in terms of teaching. She could teach. But one time I approached her with the book that was white and it was white and pink, and it was called Repetitorium. So it was got a book for some additional self-studying at home. Like you had a text, you had questions for that text, and you had words translated into Polish. And it was very nice because most of the time those texts were interesting and including a little bit of psychology too, like most of English course books. But yeah, it was for self-study. So I liked that book. So I just happily approached my teacher's desk and I showed her that I was looking at that book. I was reading that book, and she just yelled at me to go away with that book, and she didn't want to see that book with her eyes. In Polish, we say that widzieć na oczy, and she told me also that there were a lot of mistakes in that book, which is totally, when we speak English and when we want to provide our students with environments that they can speak and practice English, where they can feel safe to make those mistakes, it's fine. Because it's not like you make a mistake and you're stuck with that word that you pronounced in a word wrong way till the end of your life. That's not true. This is not how it works. So seeing the level of her work as an English teacher, like she could conduct a good lesson, I think she was aware of that students learn better when they are relaxed. This is from Tony Buzan and any other inventor of fast learning techniques, and David Snyder, and also Richard Bandler too. Yeah. So safe environment, right? Okay. So that was the book. And I think with the book, it was just, it was about the reference to my book, possibly, and therefore such a reaction, because other than that, I just don't understand her reaction. I don't understand, those utterances that you could say to anyone, even if the book was filled with mistakes. Then what? Then you say, okay, you know what? Then you can try a different book. I read something and that was good. Maybe you could try this one. What is the problem with the student coming to you with the book that there are mistakes in, like in many other books too? You will find some mistakes. And other times when I couldn't understand what have I done was the time when Miss Bohanek left my group, and she went on a yearly sick leave because her dad supposedly died, just like my dad died many years later. But sure thing, it happens to people. Okay. And when she got back, she just told me she didn't like my group, and I was in that group, so I felt like I was standing in front of her and thinking if she wanted to tell me that she didn't like me, and at the same time thinking, can you just either say it directly into me, or are you implying that you don't like me, or what? I was just really stunned by that remark. And the other remark she said was, she didn't want to teach my group, so we didn't have her back as our great beloved teacher. Maybe she wasn't beloved, but she was good at it. So, I pushed myself into her company, and I started to go to her extracurricular classes. And there was me and her and my neighbor Dominique only. So there were only three of us during, my teacher, Mrs. Bohanek, Dominique, and me. So three of us uh, people. Um, sorry. Um, Taking part in those lessons. But she would take us to the British Council. She would take us to High State Vocational School to see cultural lectures. And because we were going to those lessons, and we were not students yet, but we could go and feel fancy about being among students and participating in lectures for students. And once we were there, she wanted to also buy flowers to that teacher who agreed to let us in. And I offered that we could just contribute and give some money for those flowers with Dominique too, perhaps. And she yelled at me that she could afford flowers, so that wasn't nice. Because we could, for example, think of flowers and chocolates, or just I just wanted to notice um, that we were helped with the meaning, and that we were happy with the meaning about going to those classes. That was my intention. So I didn't know what was the wrong thing, what was the whole fuss about. Yeah. And then many years later, when I was working in Sacré-Cœur, there was one more, there was one more a duty on me, that I was asked to change a lot of the things at once. And during that entire year, I had to start doing my teacher's qualifications. And with that, I had to do, some amount of practical hours in the primary school and in a middle school, in two schools. And it was online, and it didn't, with time I saw, okay, it wasn't so challenging. But having two jobs and having my boss who wanted me to change the program all of a sudden and write the document all of a sudden yet again. And and she also told me that children didn't learn with me. And during that year, I had to start doing this course, and I enrolled on it. So I went to my former teacher, and she just told me, Miss Bohanek told me that she could just, sign it without me being physically there. And here is the thing, because I have been an English teacher already for about 6 or 7 years at that time. For some time, for a long time. And in language schools, you actually are trained better than in state schools. So the truth is, I had the skills and I knew what to do. So the truth is, it wasn't so necessary that I should go and be there. But here is what happened later with that, because I just, got it, and it was so wonderful for me at that time, because I couldn't physically just, find the time. So when I had to go to the second school and do the same thing, then I just approached the teacher who used to teach me, Miss Anya, and I told her, I asked explicitly, could she just write it, sign it for me without me being there? And I told her, that I had a lot of jobs. I told her where I taught and so on, and how I, maybe a little bit, that I knew a lot of games. Um, so, it was modeled for me what to do. And then I went with that idea because it worked with Miss Bohanek, then with Miss Anya Mazur, it should work too. And then, you know what? Then I went to Holland, and here is what happened. The papers were, maybe they were signed, but there was no stamp. The stamp was missing. And then I had to send my mother to go and get the stamp, and she didn't want to do that. So that was surprising for me too. And then when she got the stamp, then some signature on some paper was missing somewhere. So she had to go and redo it yet again. And then even there was yet something was yet again missing, I think. And what else was wrong? Oh yeah, and then I resigned because I went to Holland to stay there forever. So I resigned from the entire idea of doing those teachers qualifications. And as I resigned from it, I just left it. I didn't know I had to pay for it. And then I received calls from debt collector agency, and they would tell me that I had to pay for the course, although I didn't want to have anything to do anymore with that course. And what I have to tell you is that, I believed, and I think, now I think it covers hypnosis, extrasensory perception, but during that time, I believed everybody could hear my conversations because I had the phone hacked. So everybody could know that I started the course and I didn't finish it, and I had the history of starting and not finishing. So I was worried about me being perceived as inconsistent person. So I was worried about my image out there. And then, there was this debt collector agency, and I was ashamed, like, being perceived and thinking of me as the person who, well, didn't make ends meet financially, to call a spade a spade. So I'm telling you that so that you know that the shortcut doesn't pay off. It doesn't pay off, and when you take a shortcut, everything is just, prolonged, and it's just not worth it, and you'll not get anything out of it because it's a fake. Okay. And I told you about, okay, so maybe later. I'm sorry. Okay. And then yeah, there was one more teacher. She was new. She was a new teacher. She was very young. She was very attractive, and basically she didn't teach me anything. She just came around for the first lesson. She just read the text with flying colors. It just sounded so nice. A freshman, as if a freshman after studies, speaking so beautifully. Okay. So we got excited about having lessons with our new teacher. And then she just sat and didn't pay too much attention to classes. And if it happened that she wrote something on the blackboard, maybe it happened once, she never did the basic thing, like, writing the sentence in present continuous and presenting the positive sentence, the negative sentence, and the question and short answers. Never even that basic thing. And she would never write any words on the blackboard because, well, actually, we would work with books called opportunities. And those books were horrible course books because they didn't have the vocabulary. There were like 3-4 new words in the text. And sometimes, very often, she would just say, you tell me, what does that mean? But there was not enough vocabulary to actually keep us, sitting and checking that vocabulary at home. Or she wouldn't tell us the system, like, come up with translation or come up with definitions to those words, or or a picture. So she would just talk about the fact that, oh, you'll see that a lot of you will end up where I am right now. Or she would just talk that that it's better to teach people the words like farting and vomiting, and there's like no follow-up, like why would you teach those words? Why they are more practical according to you, so why don't you teach them? Why do you mention like two words? Yeah, I think Mrs. Batko was checking the references to Stephen King with with the homework I made about about books written by Stephen King, because she was staring. I was reading and she was staring and staring and staring to my left side, and finally she said, "Stephen, not Stefan." So there was a story about Johnny Depp and the secret window, and the window I had in my house, and those hats in that film that we had in our house, and what else was in the film, and the corn that was in the film, and I used to call my boss the unicorn. So, and the entire plot of the movie is about the man who suffered from schizophrenia, which is the label I received. And there is a lot of the aspects of people staring at him, at this man, sometimes in an aggressive way, sometimes in a perhaps an unusual way, so in a bothering way. So pretty much one aspect of my story was depicted also in the film, acted out by Johnny Depp. So maybe that. But I think she was just, a lot of the occultists perform their work like they do, like Mrs. Batko did, in order to create people who are not interested in the subject, who do not develop their interest. Because when I think about China and their traditions of having a master, this is how I imagine it. I didn't check, but this is how I understand it from movies like Miyagi and his student. Because we actually take a lot from the person that is interested in what they do. So if you think about it, if you go and study and you come across teachers who do not know how to teach, but each and every year it happened to me, I found that one professor, that one teacher who would just, make me go with it. Like it was just like this. He would just say something so interesting that I would go to this library and find a book that would just, keep me going, keep being just inspiring, that you would wait for those lectures. So it actually works like that way, like Dean Graziosi says, that we do learn from this one person. And maybe Poland is far away from the USA, and we don't have like those courses. It's not that popular like it is in the USA. But when I think about it, what he said, he's actually right. So in Poland, it's probably played out in a little bit a different setting. Like you will have, like with the teacher, with the example of the teacher, this brilliant teacher that I gave you, that I mentioned. This is what happened to me. So I think it's possible you had it too. So therefore, I believe that yes, yes, there are things like extrasensory perception that I would like to learn, or hypnosis that I would like to learn, and I would look for, individuals, yeah, like Richard Bundler, who's in my book, by the way. Oh, yeah, we'll get back to that too. Is there anything? Yes, when I mentioned Mrs. Sedek, my Polish teacher, I forgot to tell you that, we went to the Gypsy Museum in Tarnów. I was there for the very first time, and that's also was the building that I would, come across it, and I somehow did not notice it until my boyfriend Matthew just he would just stare at me and keep looking behind him. That I was just wondering what the heck was he doing? Like, what was he doing? Like, what is it about this time? Like staring at him, analyzing his behavior. Like, why is he turning around? Until I finally am like, oh, he's looking at the Gypsy Museum. And that's I'm telling you this because my observation of my own reactions was that, I didn't notice the bench of poets made by the Gypsy, or I didn't notice the big building that is, in the city center of Dartmouth. That's the Gypsy Museum, and I didn't see it, and I lived it here for many good years. So Mrs. Sedek took us to that museum, and that was the very first time I have been to that museum. So I saw the carriages and I saw the photo of the king of the Gypsy. Yeah, and then with Miss Sedek, we went to Auschwitz too. So that was the time when I felt that there was something in there, and there was, of course, it's something that I know, but I also felt it, that there was something horrible in there. And I saw the ghost too, so I told you about it. And not just a random ghost, it was a woman of similar age to mine. A very skinny, bald woman. Yeah. And then we also saw Wyspiański's house. We went on a trip with Mesedek to Wyspiański's house. So I was thinking about the book entitled Wedding, and I was wondering over there, like, where would I write the book, or what about would I write the book? Yeah, so those were the trips that I remember with Miss Sedek, and as well as going to Yama Mihalikova and having a cake over there. In that cake smelled with fish, so they check references. If you ask me, that's my approach, and that's my belief. And these people check references in your Akashic records also by visiting places like those three mentioned. Yeah. Okay, so those were the characteristic teachers from high school, and there was also Miss Voike who told me that. She told me when I didn't know how to do homework, not homework, but exercise activity in the book, which was level A1 or A2, but I didn't know how to do it. And she told me that it was a task for children from kindergarten, which possibly was, but does that mean that I had to hear it? And the task was in the book for students who were teenagers. So I was a teenager when I had to do this task. So it was a sentence that would diminish my confidence, and a sentence that would imply, not directly, that I was stupid. And I heard it too. I heard that someone close in the family was told in front of the entire class that they were stupid, or my cousin was told that his drawing wasn't good enough, and he was told that by the priest. And there was more, but when it comes to the family, there are just a lot of stories, made up stories. So yeah. Okay. So if you want to learn more about my book Piglet, then drop me a line at elkinga788@gmail.com. And if you want to check out my course Amelia, and if you want to learn more about personalities of sexually abused men and women, if you want to learn more about how lesbians, gays, transvestites, and pedophiles are created via cultural references, how they are shaped with language and experience, then check out my course. You'll find all the info in the description of the film, on my website, on Instagram and Facebook accounts. And if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.